Okay, so I want you to close your eyes for just a second.
All right, I'm playing along.
Imagine the kind of rain that doesn't just get you wet, the kind that just soaks all the way deep into your bones.
Oh, yeah, that relentless, freezing gray rain.
Exactly. We are in Cork. Cork, Ireland.
Beautiful, but very rainy.
Very. And we're sitting in this crowded pub called Grogan's House.
The windows are completely steamed up.
Right, and the air smells like stale beer and damp wool. And sitting right there in the corner is a woman named Marcy Taggart.
And Marcy is, the absolute definition of unmoored.
Yeah, she really is. She's 50 years old, she's an American, and she is entirely alone on what was supposed to be a second honeymoon.
Which is just heartbreaking right from the jump.
It is. Instead of celebrating, she's just sitting there soaked from the rain, drinking tea, staring out at the gray street.
Just trying to figure out how her entire life evaporated.
And then the inciting incident happens. She looks out that steamed-up window, or maybe she's just sitting there scanning the crowd, and she sees a young woman.
But not just any young woman.
No. She sees her daughter, Devon.
And here's the twist that kicks off this whole deep dive. Devon has been dead for 2 years.
Well, 21 months to be exact, but yes.
Right. That is what everyone else believes.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking Joy Fielding's psychological thriller, Now You See Her.
And our mission today isn't just to recap a mystery.
No, not at all. We are going to explore a story that really blurs the lines between grief, delusion, and conspiracy.
It asks that huge question. Is Marcy Taggart a mother with incredible intuition, or is she a woman having a complete mental breakdown?
Exactly. We are looking at a woman who is essentially fighting against her husband, her sister, and even her own family's history of mental illness to prove that her daughter faked her own death.
It is a phenomenal premise.
It really is. So let's just jump right into section 1, the unraveling of Marcy Taggart.
We have to start with that second honeymoon disaster.
Because the phrase second honeymoon carries so much baggage. It implies something was broken and needed fixing.
Yeah, it was a 25th anniversary trip with her husband, Peter. But Peter is not in Ireland.
He is back in Toronto.
Right, he left her. And he left her for a golf pro named Sarah.
And the detail about Sarah, the thing Marcy just cannot stop fixating on.
Oh, her handicap.
Yes. Sarah is younger, sure, but Marcy obsesses over the fact that Sarah has a lower golf handicap.
Which is such a brilliant character detail.
It tells you exactly where Marcy's self-esteem is at. She feels inadequate in every measurable, quantifiable way.
And to really understand Marcy's fragility, you have to look at Peter.
Oh man, Peter is a piece of work.
He is an orthodontist, which, is a fine profession, but he is completely obsessed with oral hygiene.
It's pathological. He views the entire human race through the lens of their teeth.
Literally. There is this scene where Marcy is on a walking tour in Cork.
Yeah, she's trying to distract herself.
Exactly. She's trying to be a normal tourist. But the tour guide has these stained, crooked teeth.
Spectacularly stained and crooked, I think is how it's described.
Right. And Marcy can't even focus on the tour because she knows Peter would just be utterly disgusted by this man.
Peter's judgment is constantly playing in her head.
And we learned that Peter once told Marcy, and this is just brutal, he told her he fell in love with her because of her obvious regard for oral hygiene.
Who says that?
I know. I mean, not your smile, not your personality, your flossing habits.
It shows that his love was entirely conditional on surface-level perfection.
So when Marcy is messy, when she is grieving and falling apart, he just treats her like she's defective, like she's fragile and crazy.
And he's not the only one pushing that narrative.
No, we have to talk about Judith.
The sister.
Yeah. If Peter is cold, Judith is just overbearing.
She is the fitness-obsessed older sister.
The spin classes, the hot yoga.
She only eats sushi, raw vegetables, and peanut butter.
The peanut butter detail is so specific. She's so restrictive that peanut butter is her only vice.
And she's had 5 husbands.
Right. A musician, a photographer, an ad exec, a stockbroker, and a lawyer.
She collects them.
She really does. But she is hypercritical of Marcy. Both she and Peter are absolutely convinced that Marcy is just hallucinating in Ireland.
Because, and we have to be fair to them here, this isn't the first time this has happened.
No, it's not. Marcy has a history of stopping strangers on the street in Toronto.
She'll see a girl with the right hair color, grab her by the shoulder, and think it's Devon.
So when she calls Peter from Cork and says she saw Devon, he immediately shuts her down.
He essentially tells her to take her pills and stop being crazy.
Which feeds right into Marcy's own internal monologue and self-doubt.
Because she questions her sanity constantly. She isn't entirely sure she didn't hallucinate it.
And the reason for that fear is so deeply rooted in her family history.
Yeah, her
Her
mother.
mother committed suicide when she was 46. She jumped off a building,
And Marcy grew up having to manage her mother's manic depression.
what we would call bipolar disorder today. So Marcy lived through the extreme highs and the crushing lows.
And her biggest fear, her absolute nightmare, is that she is turning into her mother.
When she gets emotional or feels out of control, she thinks, oh no, it's starting again.
It's the generational trauma weighing on her.
Exactly. Which brings us to section 2, the mystery of Devon.
Right, because if Devon is dead, we need to understand how she died to understand why Marcy thinks she might be alive.
So the timeline is 21 months before this Ireland trip.
Right, October.
Devon goes up to Georgian Bay. It's autumn, it's cold, and she goes canoeing alone.
The canoe is found overturned later.
But nobody is ever recovered.
And there was a note, right.
There was a note left against her pillow. Everyone else, the police, Peter, they all look at that note in the overturned canoe and rule it a suicide.
But Marcy clings to this tiny sliver of hope that it was either an accident or, more importantly, a staged disappearance.
And the reason she thinks Devon might want to stage a disappearance is because of Devon's troubled past.
Devon was diagnosed as bipolar, just like her grandmother, around the age of 17.
The generational link again.
Yeah, and the source material gives us this really harrowing flashback to explain how bad things got. The kitchen incident.
That scene is so tough to read.
It is so visceral. Can you walk us through what happens there?
Yeah, so Marcy comes into the kitchen late at night. There's broken glass all over the floor from a smashed vase of tulips.
Right.
And Devon is standing there, totally out of her mind. She's eating salt by the handful right out of the box,
Just shoveling it into her mouth.
shoveling it in, and she's babbling uncontrollably about hockey players and flowers. It is a full-blown, manic, psychotic episode.
And Marcy's reaction in that moment is so honest. She admits to us, the listener, that she hated it.
She hated the chaos.
She hated what the illness did to her daughter and her home.
And the mother-daughter dynamic was incredibly strained because of it. Devon blamed Marcy for constantly wanting her to just be normal.
Devon felt like a burden. She felt rejected by her own mother.
Exactly, which gives Devon a huge motive to disappear.
She wanted to escape her illness, her life, and honestly, she wanted to escape Marcy.
So when Marcy sees her in Cork, she isn't just looking for a ghost, she's looking for a runaway.
Which perfectly transitions us to Section 3, Allies and Romances.
Because Marcy can't solve this alone, especially when her family is actively fighting her.
Right. So she's on a tour bus heading to Cork, and she meets this guy, Vic Sorvino.
Vic is an American, a retired widget manufacturer from Chicago.
I love that detail. She mishears him at first, right?
Yeah, she thinks he says midgets instead of widgets.
It's a nice little moment of levity.
It is. Vic is handsome, he's kind, and he comes with his own baggage.
He's a widower. His first wife died of cancer.
And then he had this disastrous rebound marriage to his realtor that lasted like 6 months.
So they bond over grief. They both know what it's like to lose your anchor.
And the most important thing Vic does is he validates Marcy.
When she tells him about seeing Devon, he doesn't call her crazy.
No, he says, I think a mother knows her own child.
Which is exactly what she needed to hear. The complete opposite of Peter.
It leads to them sleeping together at his hotel.
Which is a huge deal for Marcy. It's a reawakening. She's been in this sexless, cold marriage with Peter for years.
Vic makes her feel desirable again.
But, you know, this is a thriller. We have to be a little suspicious.
Yeah, later on, Liam, the bartender, actually mentions that Vic feels a bit off.
Just a little red flag to keep in the back of your mind.
Speaking of Liam, let's talk about the bartender at Grogan's house.
Liam is great. He's significantly younger than Marcy. He's 33, she's 50.
But he really charms her. There's a fun flirtation there.
And Liam is the catalyst for the biggest breakthrough in the story.
This is the moment everything changes. Marcy finally gets up the courage to show Liam and the waitress, Kelly, a photo of Devon.
She's probably terrified they're going to say they've never seen her.
But they don't say that. They look at the photo and they identify the girl.
But they don't call her Devon.
No. They say, oh, that's Audrey,
Audrey.
an English girl who works temp jobs around town.
And she's friends with a local nanny named Shannon.
This is massive. It means Marcy is not crazy. Her daughter is alive, living under an alias, and she has a lead.
So that kicks off Section 4, the investigation in Cork. Marcy goes into full detective mode.
Or full stalker mode, depending on how you look at
To
it.
your point, She targets Shannon, the nanny.
She finds out Shannon works for the O'Connor family on Adelaide Road. It's this huge yellow brick house, very wealthy.
And Shannon herself is barely 19. She's from a small town, very shy, and absolutely terrified of her boss, Mrs. O'Connor.
So Marcy starts staking out the house,
Eh.
literally spending days just watching it.
She actually gets caught skulking around by a neighbor at one point.
Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing. But she finally intercepts Shannon in a park.
And Marcy uses a brilliant piece of deception here. She doesn't say, "Hi, I'm Devon's mom."
No, she introduces herself as Marilyn.
Why does she do that?
Because if she tells Shannon who she really is, Shannon will tell Audrey. And Audrey, or Devon, will just run away again.
Right. She has to play it cool.
So she uses her mom's skills. Shannon is struggling with this colicky baby, Caitlin O'Connor.
And Marcy just steps in, calms the baby down immediately, and ingratiates herself with Shannon. It's a great strategy. And she starts gathering intel right away.
Shannon opens up to this nice older lady. She reveals that Audrey is planning to leave for California soon.
Which puts a ticking clock on the whole thing.
And Shannon also mentions that Audrey has a past with a boy named Jax.
Jax! Hold on to that name because it brings us to Section 5. The accident.
Or the conspiracy, really.
Yeah. Marcy is searching the university campus looking for any sign of Audrey.
And she spots her, standing on a footbridge, looking down at the water of the River Lee.
The visual of her looking at the water is so poignant, given the whole drowning backstory.
Marcy doesn't even hesitate. She starts running toward the bridge.
And just as she's closing in,
Wham! A bicycle smashes right into her.
takes her out completely.
It's a young man riding it, curly hair. And he makes this huge dramatic scene out of helping her.
Right. He's apologizing, telling her not to move,
But really, what he's doing is effectively pinning her down to the ground.
keeping her from getting up, and by the time she manages to stand, Devon is gone.
Now, at first, it just seems like terrible luck. An accident.
But later, Marcy sees Shannon walking on the street talking to a guy,
The exact same cyclist.
and Marcy asks Shannon about him, and Shannon confirms that the curly-haired boy is Jax.
Audrey's ex-lover.
So if we put the pieces together,
Jax hit Marcy on purpose.
it was a targeted hit to stop her from reaching Devon on the bridge.
Which is a terrifying realization.
Yeah.
It means Devon knows her mother is in Cork.
And she is actively, physically trying to avoid her. She had her boyfriend assault her own mother just to get away.
The level of desperation there is chilling.
So Marcy realizes she has to force the issue. She's running out of time before Devon leaves for California.
Which brings us to Section 6, the climax and the arrest.
The tea party gone wrong.
Oh, this scene is so tense.
Marcy, still playing Marilyn, invites Shannon to tea at Grogan's house.
And Marcy just pushes way too hard. She's desperate for information on Audrey and Jax.
She starts grilling this poor 19-year-old girl.
And Shannon gets suspicious. She asks, "Did Mrs. O'Connor send you? Are you spying on me?"
Then the fatal slip-up happens.
Kelly, the waitress who helped identify the photo earlier, walks up to the table.
And she says out loud, "I see you found Shannon."
Boom. The whole Marilyn alias is blown.
Shannon instantly realizes that Marcy stalked her. She knew who she was before they ever met in the park.
Shannon has a total meltdown. She realizes she's sitting with a crazy person, and she demands the baby back.
Because Marcy is holding baby Caitlin.
And Marcy, in her panic, hesitates. She tries to explain herself instead of just handing the baby over.
Which looks exactly like a kidnapping attempt to anyone watching.
A bystander jumps in. He yells, "Give the girl back her baby."
A brawl breaks out, punches are thrown. Marcy actually gets a black eye,
And the police are called.
which takes us to the Bridewell Garda station.
The atmosphere is just dreary. It smells like body odor.
It's the lowest point for Marcy.
She's dealing with officers Christopher Murphy, who has a broken nose, Johnny Sweeney, and Colleen Donnelly.
And it's funny, even in this terrible moment, Marcy channels Peter's judgment. She notices that Officer Donnelly has bad teeth.
She can't escape Peter's voice in her head.
So Marcy sits there, battered, and decides to just confess everything.
She drops the Marilyn act. She tells them the whole unbelievable story. The drowning, the fake death, the photo in the pub, the alias Audrey, the hit and run by Jax.
And how do the police react?
With utter skepticism.
I mean, it sounds insane.
They logically poke holes in it. They say, "Mrs. Taggart, the windows of Grogan's pub were covered in advertisements. Could you really see your dead daughter through them in the pouring rain?"
And then comes the cliffhanger element that just breaks you.
They ask her point blank if she's ever done this before. "Have you ever hallucinated seeing your daughter?"
And she has to admit that yes, she has.
So from the police's perspective, case closed. She's a grieving, delusional mother who tried to snatch a baby.
But the listener knows she's telling the truth. We know Kelly and Liam identified the photo,
Right. But to the rest of the world, Marcy looks completely insane.
which perfectly leads us into the analysis and themes of this deep dive.
Let's start with that exact dynamic. The unreliable narrator versus gaslighting.
Joy Fielding does something brilliant here by positioning Marcy as competent enough to solve the mystery, but emotionally fragile enough to be doubted by everyone.
It's a classic gaslighting setup. The external characters, Peter, Judith, the police, they all use logic and medical history to dismiss her.
But we, the listeners and readers, know she has physical proof.
It creates this intense frustration because you are rooting for her, but you see why the world thinks she's crazy.
It ties into the theme of grief and identity.
Marcy's entire identity was tied to being a mother and a wife.
When she lost Devon and Peter left her, she was stripped of both titles. She became a nobody.
So this investigation, this desperate search for Audrey, is her way of reclaiming her agency.
If she finds Devon, she proves she wasn't a failure as a mother. She proves she didn't drive her child to suicide.
And she also fights against the generational trauma of mental illness.
Tracing that line from her mother's suicide to her own anxiety to Devon's bipolar disorder, Marcy's greatest fear is that biology is destiny.
Right. She's terrified that she is doomed to end up like her mother, and that Devon was doomed too. Proving Devon is alive is proving that they can beat the genetics.
Finally, we have to look at the theme of the kindness of strangers.
It's such an ironic contrast. Her own family, Peter and Judith, treat her with cruelty and dismissal.
But complete strangers, Vic on the bus, Liam at the pub, even Shannon before the tea party, they offer her comfort and help.
But the irony is that her daughter, as Audrey, tells Shannon that boys only bring you grief.
Meaning Devon is running from strangers while Marcy is relying on them.
They are both seeking a way out, just using different methods.
So let's look at where this leaves us at the end of the source material.
The stakes could not be higher. Marcy is in police custody. She's battered, she's humiliated, and her cover is entirely blown.
Devon knows Marcy is in Cork and looking for her.
And we know Devon is planning to flee to California very soon.
So the clock is ticking, but Marcy is trapped.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to mull over.
Think about this. If your entire family believes you are losing your mind, and the police are looking at you like you are a criminal,
And the only evidence you have is purely circumstantial.
how far would you be willing to go to trust your own eyes?
Would you keep fighting the whole world, or would you eventually surrender and believe that you really are crazy?
It's a terrifying question, especially when you were in a beautiful, rainy city like Cork.
A city that feels like it's full of ghosts, both real and imagined.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves, and we will catch you next time.